Hey everyone, I just wanted to let you know, as kind of a public service announcement, that this is kind of going to be the last podcast for a while. I don't know, that might be good news to you, depending on whether or not you like this podcast. It's summer, and I don't want to spend all day editing podcasts and watching movies inside. I want to actually go outside, and that's what we do.
When we go back, I will still be inarticulate as always. And
Yeah. But speaking of which, we don't really know when exactly we'll be back. I'm sure you'll get a heads up.
But it's gonna be soonish.
Like September, something like that. Once summer is over, we might as well record podcasts again.
Please remember to subscribe to the podcast. Still, wait for us. Subscribe to the podcast.
So we watched Memento, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And I would like to know, what did you absolutely hate about this movie?
I think that what I absolutely hate about this movie is it's very sad when he has the prostitute come over and sleep in the bed, and then he just gets wake up so he can feel like his wife is there. Yeah,
and he's trying to trick himself.
Yeah.
Into this bad experience, so that he would burn all the memorabilia, all the mementos, so to speak.
Do you think that this is just why?
I think so, because in the scene before, which chronologically comes after, he says, "I can't remember to forget you."
Yeah.
So I think what this is a ploy, because in Memento we see Leonard Shelby setting himself up a lot, like several times. He tricks himself into doing things. And obviously the big twist at the end of the movie is that he tricked himself to do everything that we see was just him tricking himself.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it not just when he kills Freddy?
Teddy. Yes, but chronologically at the beginning, right after the black and white stuff,
he kills Teddy.
He kills Jimmy. And he sets himself up to kill Teddy, which chronologically at the end, which is the very beginning of the movie, happens. Right?
Okay.
So in the middle of the movie, in terms of everything that we see, in the middle of it, which is at the end of the movie, we see that Shelby sets himself up to kill Teddy. He doesn't actually do it yet. That's all that we see throughout the movie in the colored sequences. So the whole point is that he tricks himself.
But maybe it's just about Teddy. Why do you think he keeps tricking himself?
Because that's just the most extreme version of it. But he also tricks himself into thinking that his wife's still alive, and into not being nostalgic about these things, and seeing them as objects of pain and all of that. So, but yeah, I agree that it is upsetting.
Yeah.
I think generally speaking, this movie is pretty upsetting.
Yeah.
Not a happy movie. I absolutely hate the spit thing. It's
my gosh, that's awful. That's the worst. I hate it. I hate it so much.
The point is that it's gross, but I don't know. It's just when you have to watch it, it's almost like you're being subjected to it. And
then you have to drink it. But it turned out very very useful for Natalie, because then she kind of knew how long his memory was. So when she had to use it in order to make him go and kill Todd,
to manipulate him.
Then she had a rough idea of the timing.
Yeah. Although I think the suggestion isn't that there is a 15-minute delay or whatever, and then he forgets everything. I think it's about concentration, because he also at some point says concentrate, try to remember this, and so it's not it's just a clock that starts going. It's more like if he's focusing on something, he can really keep going for a while. But if he focuses on anything else, suddenly he doesn't know what happened previously.
Yeah.
What did you absolutely love about this movie?
I think I like that they alternates between the color and the black and white.
Okay. What do you like about that?
If it was just a movie going backwards, it would be interesting, but like they've pointed that he alternates between the scenes that go backwards and the black and white scenes that go forward at a depth of perception. It confounds us even more.
Okay.
And we also are like the black and white scenes is where we have more access to Leonard's point of view and his mind, but that's also
Really? Because I think the idea is that a lot of the black and white is more objective, whereas the colored is more subjective. Like that's actually how Leonard perceives the world. Like this weird, like not knowing what happened before constantly, which is what's transferred to the audience. Whereas in the black and white parts, it's much more like matter of fact. Like he tells a story how it happened, and we only learn later that it was actually kind of skewed.
But we also learn like about his life before, what he thinks about Leonard Shelby.
So it's not a matter of perspective, then it's more of a matter of backstory.
So both the backstory, but then at the end we see like the real perspective of him tricking himself. That's when the black and white starts to become colorful. And so it's like, well, this is like the origin story part that we get to know. So you're just trying to pick up all the pieces. I think that I like how it's backwards.
You like that it's a movie that's essentially backwards?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that was also kind of the gimmick, right? Like when I first learned about this movie, it was like, oh, no, this is a movie that goes backwards, and I was like, I don't want to watch that. That sounds stupid. And I didn't watch it for a long time. And eventually I did. This was a movie that in some way or another came up in university courses, and I didn't even watch it for that. And then like 2 years later, I just watched it because I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of curious. And I was like, holy shit, why did I not watch this earlier? Because I think it's really good. And it's also like, it's not just, because when you imagine a movie moving backwards, you just think, stupid. Like, no, but what is the point of that? But it's made with a system. Like, it's made so that you still can kind of follow.
Because Leonard has a system.
That's it, right? But it's like a puzzle that you as the audience are meant to solve. Just like Leonard is setting up these little puzzles for himself, meant to solve them and, live in this made-up reality, and in order not to be despairing. I think, and it's like, it's just fucking masterful. If you think that this is like his second feature movie and his first like big production.
But you said that this was like a cheap movie.
Well, not as cheap as his previous movie, which cost like a few $1,000, but like, I mean, his budgets now are ridiculous. So compared to that, this was.
But he has lots more stunts and he creates worlds and stuff.
Absolutely, obviously, like this is a movie that, in theory, if you have a writer who is really good but doesn't demand a lot of pay, which presumably in this case was the case because the director Christopher Nolan wrote it. So, if you have that, you can probably make it cheaper. I mean, they still got
you have to find a good actor to make to be Leonard.
That's the thing. He still got a cast that's small, but these are not random people, especially. Like Guy Pearce is, in my opinion, a world-class actor. And then you have Joe Pantoliano and Carrie-Anne Moss, who were in The Matrix around the same time. Like, I mean, maybe, I don't know what they, what kind of salary they demand, but certainly in terms of skill, they are high-caliber actors.
But what do you absolutely love about this movie?
Speaking of Guy Pearce, I think Guy Pearce is by far like the thing that makes this movie. Like, there's so many wonderful things about it, including how it's written and how it's executed in terms of kind of the technical stuff of it all. But like, you need an actor who does everything, basically. Guy Pearce is clearly an unlikable character. Like, he's kind of an arrogant asshole. He's an arrogant man. He constantly basically lectures people about how the world works, even though he can not at all like remember what's going on. And he's constantly building his own reality. And like, you're just not in position to do that then. But at the same time, like, you can understand his dilemma. You can understand the grief that he's going through. Like, you can you can kind of hope for him that things turn out okay, even though it doesn't feel like there's a way for it.
It's not gonna get better. It's still gonna be stuck in this.
And then it's just all the small things, all the facial expressions that he brings to every scene that constantly like remind us of his situation. Like he describes at some point that Sammy Jankis would have a hint of recognition in his eyes, and that's what Guy Pearce does just constantly. He does like this, like you fake it, you try to look like you know what's going on, but at the same time you're kind of piecing it together like a detective. And then, like, I think that's also ultimately where this sense of arrogance comes from. It's from having to fake it so much that, like, you might as well just pretend that you're the master of the universe. Like, you have everything under control, even though realistically you have pretty much nothing in control. And I think Guy Pearce pulls that off perfectly. Also, there's a lot of improvisation in the black and white stuff, where it's like, he tells his backstory, and apparently a lot of it is just Guy Pearce, like that. He just comes up with like how he behaves and what he says and all that, and it's great. And he came up with one of the things that are just like a nice touch, which is when Teddy tells Lenny not to trust Natalie. He goes like, write it down, right? And he gives him his own pen, and like Lenny needs to have a way to to distinguish between things he should trust and things he shouldn't trust, right? And so at some point he does point out that, like, if it's my handwriting, like, how can this not be my room and things like that. So in this case, he uses the wrong pen.
Yeah.
And then apparently Guy Pearce also came up with the idea that he writes it, because he writes everything in all caps on the pictures that he takes. And in this case, he writes it in lowercase.
Yeah.
It's like a way to remind himself not to believe the thing he wrote down.
But actually, this is interesting because Leonard has this anterograde amnesia. So it's not regular amnesia, and up to the accident you don't remember anything. You remember everything up to the accident, and you're not able to create new memories.
Right.
And there is a very famous case in the 50s of this HM patient, but then there are a couple of more cases, but it's very rare. It's a hippocampal damage.
Mm-hmm.
And these patients, like the real ones, they didn't wrote themselves letters, and even when they had journals, they wouldn't trust them, even if it was their handwriting, because they couldn't remember writing it. So it's actually a system that doesn't work in reality.
Okay. So this movie is nonsense.
It's not that. It's like maybe there is one case for which it works, but you just say like there are all these things about like recognizing when it was for the people that since the 50s on had this condition. It didn't really work because you cannot. It's very difficult to just see your handwriting and have no recollection of having written something. And
maybe if you're like drinking heavily, so you have experience with blackouts or something
maybe
like
Leonard Shelby was an alcoholic. One other thing that I love is the scene in which he wakes up in the bathroom.
Yeah.
And it doesn't wake up in the bathroom, it just reboots in the bathroom.
He doesn't really reboot. Again, like he just kind of gets confused.
Yeah.
And doesn't know why he's there anymore.
And then he smells himself and starts to shower in this guy's room. It just really gives you the idea of like how difficult his life is. He has to just like do the smell test to figure out if he showered lately or not. And
imagine you're like at a party and you go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And then your guest just starts showering.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously this is a more heightened situation where he's basically broken into someone's place and uses his shower. But like, even in like normal life, that would be so disorientating.
Yeah.
And look, the real condition that this is based on, it's gotta be hell.
Oh, but to be fair, also like the people that had this, they were kind of unaware of the condition.
Yeah.
Like they didn't go like Leonard's like, oh, I have this condition. They just like keep reintroduce themselves to their psychologist, but they just went on through. So there was maybe there is probably a little bit less awareness.
Do you think that this movie is particularly interested in this condition? Because I don't think that this movie is about retrograde amnesia. I think that's just a vehicle to do something else, which brings us to the question, what is the point of this movie?
So I think that, okay, he wants to do something else, but if you put something that it's kind of like psychology related and stuff, I get very interested.
Sure, but like, like realistically speaking, does it bother you that this is not exactly realistic, that he uses all his notes and things like that?
No, it doesn't bother me, but I also want to have all the other knowledge. Like,
Okay.
I'm not offended by it, but this is all the other knowledge that there is to know, and maybe you want to know as well, because
what is the point of this movie?
Who am I?
Who am I is the point of this movie?
Like, who are people?
Yeah.
What are they? Like, what
makes
happened?
an
How
identity?
can you know who you are? It's because you remember who you are. It's because you look in a mirror and you see who you are. It's because you repeat the same actions every day.
Yes.
It's because you have I have a system.
Yeah. The final, well, 2 lines I should say of the movie are, we all need mirrors to remind ourselves of who we are. And it goes like, now, where was I? Which is, that's more of the comedic way of ending the movie. But
Yeah.
like this idea that if we don't reflect on ourselves, somehow we are not ourselves. That's definitely a thing. I think on a broader scale, the movie is about the relationship between reality and our perception of reality. Because, like the idea is, if we didn't have the ability to remember the world wouldn't exist, so to speak. Like for Lenny, nothing has happened before this. He has to make up what happened before. Like when he walks into a room, he has to use his mind to figure out
Yeah.
what happened before he walked into the room. Right? Like when he's sitting on that toilet and holding a bottle, he has to figure out what he was trying to do. He smells his armpit, realizes he needs to shower. So he just showers because he figured that's why he came in here. Right? Like, it is completely divorced from the sort of objective reality that in theory could exist. Right? And I think that's what the movie is about. It's like our perception skews reality, right? And never to the extent that it happens in this movie, obviously. But it, like when, like you and I sometimes argue about conversations we've had and we remember them differently. And like you said something else than what I remember. And like we no longer know what actually happened.
Well,
Like,
to be fair, I know that I don't have like a very strong grasp with reality.
no, but like I think that's the point of this movie. It's like taking this idea to the extreme. Where it's like if you had no evidence for what happened, if you had no memories, like you would make up your own memories. And it's like the same thing. It's like it's made up. It's fictional, basically. It's like a fictional approach to reality. And we all do it every day on a smaller scale.
But it's been proven also that like the memories are not so trustworthy. Like this is what Leonard tells Teddy.
He says police people don't sit around remembering things.
Yeah, like, but this is true. Like we, like our perception of our emotions, like emotions really affect what kind of memory we recall and how easy it is to recall memories, how easy it is to form memories. As like our mental state impacts our perception of the reality and of the world so much. And then just like memories sit there and you don't know. It's like, for example, I have a very active imagination, and sometimes I remember things I imagine, and I remember like real things, and they're kind of similar, so they kind of get mashed up in my brain, and I don't know. I think I had tea with Roger Rabbit.
If the nature of reality is disputed, like if we don't quite have objective approaches to reality, then I think the question that we have to ask in terms of this movie, to bring it back to that, is like, who is Leonard? And I think the most important question maybe is also like, who is Sammy Jankis and how do these two ideas collide in the movie?
So I think that the movie points to the fact that Leonard is Sammy, at least like in my opinion, is Sammy Jenkins.
It's Jankis.
Jenkins.
No N at the end.
Jankis.
Yeah.
Oh.
There's a tattoo where you can see how it's spelled. So
Remember Sammy Jenkins.
no.
Jenkins.
Jankis.
Jankis.
Yeah.
Jankis.
Remember Sammy Jankis.
Jankis.
So much editing to do.
So, even though I don't understand how it could be, but I think it should really be that Lenny and Sammy are the same person. Okay. But how can Sammy go out of the psychiatric ward where he was after his wife died?
Okay. Do you think that one of the reasons why Leonard doesn't like it when he's called Lenny, he says that it's because he didn't like it when his wife did it.
Yeah.
But you think maybe there's something there? Because Sammy, that his name is like Samuel F. Jankis or something like that. Like, it's not Sammy either. Like, you think there's a connection between these two things?
So, actually, while I was researching for this movie, I read an article that said that actually when Teddy is about to be killed, he called him Sammy.
Oh.
And...
it's true. And also, well, Jimmy does that.
Okay. One of the people that is about to be killed him, like, just plead.
Yeah, he says Sammy, and Lenny goes like, what the fuck's going on? Why does he say Sammy's name?
It's like, because maybe he knew him before.
But Teddy then says that Sammy was actually a different person who was a fraud.
But I don't believe what Teddy says.
You don't believe Teddy? You don't believe his lies?
Don't believe his lies. He's not your friend.
See, I think Teddy comes across like as genuine. Like, I think he likes Lenny. But he also, like, is a piece of shit and uses him.
Rationally, I want to believe that he is genuine, but from the first scene, everything about how this guy looks and he moves and he talks, I hate him so much. He's like probably just like he's a scumbag and I don't like him, and Leonard is better and I'm as arrogant as Leonard, so I'm on his side.
Okay.
And this guy was like, I don't trust him.
I think the final scenes in the movie, like, it just comes across like Teddy's actually like, because he's constantly wearing a mask, he's pretending, he's keeping his cards close to his chest, and I think that mask kind of falls in that scene where Jimmy was just killed, and then Teddy tries to explain to him that, like, this is all nonsense and, like, they were just trying to make the money. Because he says, like, yeah, that and your thing. Like, he says, like, on the one hand, I was just trying to make some money, but also we're doing this, like, because you need to feel good about avenging your wife.
Teddy actually was the cop that was working on his wife's murder.
Yeah.
And he believed him.
Yeah.
And they found John G.
Yeah.
And he thought that everything would click, but it didn't. And so he just kept giving him John G's.
Yeah, and that sound, like, the way it's performed, it seems genuine. Now, it could be another layer of deception, obviously, but I feel like we can kind of trust Teddy in that scene. I always felt it was kind of weird that we get flashbacks to Sammy Jankis, because that suggests more objectivity. Like, we're actually seeing Sammy Jankis rather than this just being told by an unreliable narrator. How do you feel about that?
I think that it helps, then it just supports the what's real, what's not.
You think so?
Yeah. And also, it's nice that we have flashback of Leonard being young. Okay. Because one of the things is that he has this, he's like, I did it for a living, I was just researching if something was real or not. Mm-hmm. And then you just see that he behaves more or less the same way as he behaved there.
It's interesting that we see him as an insurance claims guy, because he's kind of like an investigator. And now he is just investigating, like, kind of his own memories, so to speak. That's the idea, isn't it? It's a very noir way of doing things. You have this veteran, who is now it's personal. That's kind of the classic thing. Like, he used to do investigations for insurance, which is the most sterile environment, so to speak. It's just like no heart in it, right? For him, it's just like, I did this. We denied the claim, and then I got a promotion. Like, it's not about the terrible fate of Sammy Jankis. or his wife. So now it's in this other sort of colored story. It is about his own fate and his wife's. Like there's a parallel to it, but one of them is sterile and the other one is personal. There's also the shot. It's kind of like a Fight Club thing. Where it's like there was a very brief moment where Sammy Jankis essentially turns into Leonard Shelby. So the actor, Stephen Tobolowsky, sits on a chair, and the doctor walks by, and when he is revealed again from behind the doctor, it's actually Guy Pearce sitting there.
That is also like confusing because he has all of these police work that apparently he redacted himself.
Supposedly, yeah.
But if there was like a case and a police investigation, and like, how is Leonard just out and about?
What do you mean?
Like, he's not able to, like, he should be in a facility.
Yeah. It might be true that he escaped a mental institution. What we do know is that he kind of falls in with criminals, and they use him to do things, and everybody seems to kind of know about him. Like, it's not like he just shows up.
Memory guy.
Like, he is unaware of it until people say, oh, yeah, you're memory guy. So it could be that he escaped, and then he had to go underground, and he doesn't know that anymore now.
Yeah.
But maybe these criminals are, like, making sure that the police doesn't get him. It's possible. See, I like this movie because it's, on the one hand, it gives us a puzzle that seems to have kind of a solution that we can all get to, which is like, oh, he set himself up, and now he's killing Teddy because basically for no reason. It's like his way of taking revenge on people, But then there's this other layer where like there's all these other things that are just kind of as a vibe around this movie. Like, how is Lenny here? Why is he falling in with these people? And how close are Sammy Jankis and Leonard Shelby related to each other? And I think I like that because it's like it gives you much more than what you see on screen.
But this is also like he then just goes on and tattoos the plate,
license plate number
of the car on his leg. So after he has done it, how many more times can he trick himself into killing other John G's? That's
a good point. He has like limited tattoo capacity.
That's not just like about the space. It's just that he has like license plate and then he writes down the license plate.
Yeah. But don't you think that this is like an infinite riddle? Because that car is gonna get towed and someone else eventually will have that license plate. And like, it's not, the point isn't that he will kill more people necessarily or kill the next person that gets that car. But it's like another weird clue that he will come across eventually again, try to figure out, and maybe he'll find out that this car belonged to a policeman who was shot mysteriously or disappeared mysteriously. And then that's his next thing that will, like, and then there will be a tattoo like disappeared policeman. And he doesn't know that he is the one who killed that man. And, you know, like, it's more about this spiral of, like, keeping himself busy so as not to have to deal with grief, which could be, like, another big theme in this movie, which is, like, he burns everything so he doesn't have to deal with grief. He goes around avenging his wife over and over so he doesn't have to deal with grief.
Well, but how can you deal with grief when you're not able to make any new memory? You're stuck with the memories you have. That's the point of the movie, isn't it? Apparently,
murdering people is how.
Not even that.
Well, in the moment, he probably feels better.
Yeah, but then you forget.
Yeah, that's why he keeps doing it. Christopher Nolan has a reputation for having wives being killed or committing suicide or being absent or dead in his movies.
Is he married?
Well, not only that, but his wife produces all his movies.
Does she sleep with a knife pillow?
I don't know, but it's a weird fact, isn't it?
Like, they go to couples therapy about it.
Emma Thomas is her name, and they've been, they have known each other for like before he made Following, even for like high school or something.
Oh, that's so cute.
So maybe their relationship stands above that, but it is a weird phenomenon.
I imagine it's like, oh, sweetheart, I have an idea for a new movie, and then like,
okay, look, the wife gets raped and killed.
Like, again? What do you want from me?
I like this movie because it is using the medium of film to like great effect. This is a movie that's told with film, and if this was a audio play or just a novel or a short story, which it is based on, like you'd have to do it different. Like you'd have to think about how can I use the medium of like writing or audio to do the same thing, like to tell this story in a similar way. So this, I like that it uses editing basically, which is a movie technique, right? To tell this story in a compelling way.
But because the first time I watched this movie, I remember that my favorite part is that I like when in a movie there is voiceover and it's used well. Yeah. But I know you don't like voiceover.
Well, this is, yeah, okay. I've always wondered why I don't mind it in this movie, and I think it's because it's used as an internalized, like he is expressing his thoughts, right? And you need that in a world where there's nothing other than what this character thinks about it. So in that respect, it's fine. Like, it's not like the year is 2002 and Leonard is walking out into the road wondering what he's doing. Let's watch. You know, it's not that kind of voiceover. Voiceover as an externalization of thought is okay as long as there's like basically no other way. Like, you know, like him going like, there's nothing in the drawers, but you check anyway. You know, that's like that he's expressing the routine of it, and it pays off later when he does the same thing and there's a gun on the Bible, right? Like, it's like, this is not just voiceover to understand, like to basically to cheap out of telling a story. This is essential. And so I think voiceover per se isn't bad, but oftentimes it's not essential and it's more of a tell don't show. Do you think Christopher Nolan is pretentious? Like, I mean, I think this is probably his least pretentious movie because it is kind of a small scale story told in an interesting way. But then you have like blockbusters like Batman Begins or something like that, or Inception, which are like, they have the appeal of a Star Wars, but still pretend to be deep. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know if my answer is yes, but what I think is that I would prefer Inception to be without the super big special effects and just be very more introspective, like Memento is. Yeah. And that's what more I like it. So I don't know if the fact that he puts there the effect makes Spectacle. It pretentious. Yeah. I think that for other people that like more about seeing the fact could be pretension, that there is this all like, oh yes, and we have to make this story about make it deep about reality and stuff. Yeah. It's like, to me, it's like, you can put the characters in a room and talk about it. I just want to see plays, okay? I think I just want to see theater plays in which people are in a room and talk about things.
You don't like movies.
What do you think about the tattoos? You don't like tattoos. Do you like how the tattoos are used in this movie?
Well, the tattoos in this movie are like this. It's like an expression of desperation to be able to trust anything. I think it would be quite unlikely that someone secretly tattooed you, and so it's this idea that like the only thing you can trust is yourself. Yeah. Thus, you write your notes on yourself, but so you yourself wrote them and you put them onto yourself, and that's like the closest you can ever get telling yourself something if you can't remember having done so. Yeah. So speaking to yourself in the future, basically. And I think as a storytelling device, it works great. I don't think it looks great. Like, he doesn't look good with all these random notes scribbled on himself. So if you're asking me if I like the tattoos as a fashion statement, no.
No, but it's not like a fashion statement.
But that's why I don't like tattoos. I think they don't look good, and they don't look good in this movie either.
But if you agree with the fact that reality and identity is fleeting, then like a tattoo could be a good way to this could be what tattoos are. It's like a good way of leave yourself a message of who you are in a specific moment, because you don't want to lose the person that you are in this moment, but you know that your identity is going to change.
But of course it's wrong, right? Like, the movie also shows us that the information on the tattoos is not to be trusted either. So the point really isn't whether, like, it doesn't make a statement about how you could access objectivity better. What it really does is it's like I said, it's an expression of the desperation behind any situation, that he needs to trust something and he thinks that he can do it this way, but not even that works, you know.
You want your future self to believe that this was your past.
Yeah. You know, it'd be like a really weird thing to do.
What?
It's like just record this podcast backwards.
I don't know if I'm able to.
You don't know if you're able to?
No, I can lose track of what I'm saying.
Okay.
I will be confused.
So we shouldn't just like do that and play the outro music now?
No. What?
Okay. Thanks for watching. Bye.
What?